They used my name to open loans. Without telling me. When the collectors called, I answered. With one sentence. The bank froze every account. Their lives collapsed in 48 hours. Family story. I still remember the exact sound of the phone ringing that Tuesday morning. It was one of those cheap plastic landlines we kept in the kitchen of our little ranch house on Maple Crest Drive in a quiet subdivision outside Dayton, Ohio. The kind of neighborhood where people wave when they mow their lawns and the HOA sends letters if your grass gets over 3 inches. I was standing at the counter in my bathrobe, pouring coffee into the same blue mug I'd used for 12 years, when the phone lit up with a number I didn't recognize. I almost didn't answer. I'd been getting more of those calls lately. The ones that hang up after 3 rings or leave robotic messages about important account information. But something made me pick it up. "Is this Patricia Ellison?" a woman's voice asked. Professional. Flat. "Yes," I said. "This is regarding the outstanding balance on your home equity line of credit with Summit National Bank. The account is currently past due by 62 days. We need to discuss repayment options immediately." I laughed a little. Not because it was funny. Because it didn't make sense. I don't have a home equity line with Summit National. I don't even bank there. There was a short pause. Then she read off an account number, an address that was mine, and the last 4 digits of my social security number. My stomach dropped so hard I had to set the coffee mug down before I dropped it. "I never opened that," I said. My voice came out thinner than I expected. She started talking about collection procedures and possible legal action. I barely heard her. I was already walking into the living room where my husband Greg was reading the paper like it was any other morning. I put the call on speaker and told her to repeat everything. Greg's face changed the second he heard the social security number. He stood up so fast the paper fell to the floor. After I hung up, we just stared at each other. Then I went to the desk drawer where we kept our important papers and pulled out every bank statement, every credit card bill, everything with my name on it. Nothing matched what that woman had just described. No Summit National. No home equity line. No $28,000 balance. I called the bank myself that afternoon. After being transferred 4 times and repeating my name and date of birth like a broken record, a fraud specialist finally came on the line. She pulled up the account. It had been opened 14 months earlier. Online application. My name. My social. My mother's maiden name as the security answer. The mailing address was a post office box in the next county over. I asked who the authorized user was. There was a long silence on her end. According to our records, the secondary authorized user is listed as Robert Ellison. My brother. I hung up without saying another word. Greg was already on his phone calling our own bank, our credit union, every place we had money. I just sat on the edge of the couch and stared at the carpet. Robert. My little brother. The one I'd co-signed a car loan for when he was 23 and drowning. The one whose kids I babysat every summer. The one who still called me Trish like we were kids again. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying every conversation we'd had over the past year. The way he'd asked if I still used the same email address. The casual question about whether I'd ever changed my social security card after that wallet theft years ago. The time he borrowed my laptop just for an hour while his was in the shop. All of it sat in my chest like wet concrete. The next morning the second call came. Different company. Different account. This one was a personal loan for $19,000 from a place called Horizon Lending. Opened in my name. Same post office box. Same secondary user, Robert Ellison. And this time there was a third name listed as a co-borrower. My sister-in-law, Denise. I didn't call them. Not yet. I called the credit bureaus instead. One by one I froze every file. Then I started pulling reports. By lunchtime I had 3 thick stacks of paper on the kitchen table. My name was on 7 different accounts I had never seen. Credit cards. Personal loans. A store card at a furniture place that had charged almost $6,000 in living room sets and a flat-screen television. Every single one of them listed Robert or Denise or both as authorized users or co-borrowers. Total exposure was just under $94,000. Greg wanted to drive over to their house right then. I told him to wait. I needed one more piece. I called Summit National back and asked for the fraud department again. This time I had the account numbers ready. I told the specialist exactly what I needed. She put me on hold for 11 minutes. When she came back, she said the accounts were flagged and a formal dispute was being opened. Then she asked if I wanted to add any statement to the file. I thought about it for a long time while the hold music played softly in the background. Then I said the only thing that felt true. I never authorized any of this. Not one signature. Not one application. Not $1. These accounts were opened without my knowledge or consent. That was the sentence. One sentence. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't cry. I just said it clearly and then asked her to note the time and date. She did. What I didn't know then was how fast banks move when the words identity theft and family members show up in the same file. Within 3 hours, every account that carried my name as primary had been locked. Not just the fraudulent ones. The real ones too. Our joint checking. Our savings. The small money market account we used for property taxes. Everything. Temporary security freeze, they called it. Standard procedure while they investigated. Robert found out the same afternoon when his debit card declined at the gas station. Denise found out when the grocery store refused her card for a cart full of food. By 6 o'clock that evening, both of their phones were blowing up with decline notifications. Their primary checking account at the same credit union we used had been frozen because my name was still listed as a joint owner from years ago when we'd helped them open it after Robert's first bankruptcy. I had never taken my name off. I just never used it. They showed up at our door at 7:40 p.m. Robert looked like he hadn't slept in days. Denise's eyes were red. Their 2 teenagers stayed in the car with the engine running. Robert started talking the second I opened the door. Trish, we can explain. It was temporary. We were going to pay it all back. Denise's hours got cut and the transmission went out on the van and we just needed breathing room. I didn't invite them in. I stood in the doorway with Greg behind me and listened while Robert's voice climbed higher and higher. He talked about the kids' braces. About the roof that needed fixing. About how he'd always planned to tell me once things stabilized. Denise kept interrupting with, "We never meant for it to get this big and you know how hard it's been." I let them talk until they ran out of words. Then I said the same sentence I'd said to the bank. I never authorized any of this. Robert's face went white. Denise started crying in that quiet, broken way that makes your throat hurt just listening to it. They left without another word. The next 48 hours moved like a landslide. By Wednesday morning, the credit union had frozen every linked account that carried my social security number as a joint or authorized party. That included the small business checking account Robert used for his side landscaping work. Payroll for his 2 employees bounced. One of them showed up at Robert's house that afternoon demanding cash. The furniture store where Denise had charged the living room set repossessed everything before noon on Thursday. They backed a truck up to the driveway and carried out the sectional, the coffee table, the television. The neighbors watched from their porches. Horizon Lending issued a formal fraud claim and contacted the local police. Summit National did the same. By Thursday evening, a detective had left a card in Robert's mailbox requesting he come in for a voluntary interview. Their landlord, who also banked at the same credit union, received notice that the automatic rent draft had failed. He gave them 72 hours to bring the account current or face eviction proceedings. I know all of this because Denise called me from a block number late Thursday night. Her voice was raw. She said the kids were asking why the electricity kept flickering and why there was no food in the refrigerator. She said Robert was sitting on the back steps smoking cigarettes he hadn't touched in years. She asked if there was any way I could unfreeze the accounts just long enough for them to move money around. I told her no. Greg and I sat at our kitchen table that night with the credit reports spread out like evidence. We went through every line. Every charge. A pair of diamond earrings from a jewelry store in Columbus. A weekend at a cabin in the Hocking Hills. Multiple cash advances from ATMs in towns I didn't recognize. It wasn't just survival money. It was lifestyle money. Quiet, careful, and completely hidden from me for over a year. Friday morning the bank called me one more time. The fraud specialist said the investigation was moving faster than usual because the secondary users had both listed the same residential address and phone numbers that matched Robert and Denise's public records. She said the temporary freeze on our personal accounts would be lifted within 24 hours once we signed the affidavits. She also said the fraudulent accounts would remain locked indefinitely and that the bank would be pursuing recovery from the authorized users. I signed the papers that afternoon at a branch downtown. The notary stamped each page while Greg stood next to me with his arms crossed. When we walked out into the parking lot, the sun was bright and ordinary, the kind of late summer light that makes everything look normal even when nothing is. I haven't spoken to Robert since that night on the porch. Denise texted once more on Saturday. Just 3 words. I'm so sorry. I didn't answer. The house on Maple Crest Drive is quiet again. The phone doesn't ring with collection numbers anymore. Our accounts are open. The credit freezes are still in place and will stay that way for a long time. Sometimes I catch myself listening for the landline out of habit. Sometimes I still pour coffee into that blue mug and stare at the backyard where Robert's kids used to play on the swing set we bought them for Christmas one year. The swing set is still there. The chains creak a little when the wind moves them. I haven't taken it down. Not yet.